They have a few for sure. I think probably, I mean, it depends what you're going to do with Hassan Reddick. If he's going to play mostly linebacker, I still think you have a big need at the edge on a defensive end. I think even with Reddick, you still need another guy who can get to the quarterback. So whether that's in the middle at defensive tackle or whether that's on the end, this team was horrific at getting to the quarterback last year from their front four, and I think that's the area of this team that they need the most help. I think cornerback, Darius Slay is still very good, but he's not going to be good forever. He's 31, so he's aging, and so if you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line, you need another cornerback. You need a number 2 cornerback for this year's team, and so that's a big need.
Countdown to the draft. We got for the first round of the NFL draft, where the Eagles have not one but 2 picks. Here to give us some draft insight, Eagle Insight, Football Insight, formerly of Bleeding Green Nation, which means he has my condolences already that he had to work with BLG. But more importantly, host of the Eye on the Enemy podcast, Eagle Podcast, John Stolnis, good enough to jump aboard with us. John, how you been?
I'm good, guys. Good morning. And just so you're aware, I'm still with Bleeding Green Nation. The Eye on the Enemy podcast is part of Bleeding Green Nation, and I still write a weekly article for them. So
there you go. Trying to push him out the door.
I'm still working with BLG though, so that's
our condolences.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
our condolences there. So the bigger news, though. And John, we're glad you're still with Bleeding Green Nation. Brandon does a great job. But how excited are you about the big move? JJ Arcega-Whiteside to tight end.
That's all I've been talking about to friends and family for the last 24 hours. It's going to be the difference maker here in 2022. They're trying to get something out of him. I mean, they spent a second-round pick on him. I guess this is their last swing for the fences with Arcega-Whiteside to make him a backup tight end, because he's not going to play a whole lot of snaps with Dallas Goedert there. I mean, maybe they're trying to get creative in how to use some 2 tight end sets or even 3 tight end sets. I don't know exactly what the long-term thinking is here, but maybe it's also just to throw the kid a bone. I don't expect it to work. I don't really expect it to stick, but I guess it's worth a try. I mean, you've already spent the money. You've already spent the capital and a second-round pick on him. See if it works, I guess.
Is it more throw the kid a bone and try and do the right thing, or more, hey, we used the second-round pick on this guy, we got to get something out of it. We're 3 years in, and the production has been minimal at best. Let's see if we can just throw a dart from 2 miles away and see if we can hit the middle of the board.
Well, the NFL is generally not a league where you are throwing guys bones, so it's generally a production league. And I think what they're trying to do here is, like you said, get some – they don't want that pick to be a sunk cost 100%, so they're trying to get something out of that pick. And I think they probably see some things in Arcega-Whiteside they like. He is a bigger receiver. One of the things he has been able to do is he's been praised for his blocking. We remember the quote from his rookie season when he graded out really well because he could block. But as a tight end, you would be called to do that a little bit more. And so I think that is part of the reason why they're doing this move. I think it's a football move. I don't think it's necessarily to try and give the kid a future, but maybe that's a nice ancillary benefit. Who knows?
Yeah. Is there a bigger warning light in sports, John, than when they talk about blocking? When the first word out of your mouth about an NFL wide receiver is blocking, you're in trouble. And that's kind of the first word out of the mouth when they were talking about Zach Pascal.
Yeah.
Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, I mean, if Zach Pascal is your number 4 wide receiver, it's fine, but he can't be your number 2 or your number 3. He just has not to this point shown that he can produce at that level. And so it's an underwhelming wide receiver trade or selection or a free agent signing this offseason. You would have liked to have seen that Calvin Ridley trade go through. That would have really changed the way I think we feel about the offense and the receiving room. If that had happened, it was unfortunate that didn't work out. And then you just saw a number of other wide receivers get paid ridiculous amounts of money this offseason. And it didn't seem as though, A, the Eagles didn't want to go that high on some of those salaries, or B, Eagles free agent receivers maybe just didn't want to play in an offense that's probably going to run the ball more than any other offense in the NFL this year.
John, I want to take you into a vacuum, and I know the reality isn't a vacuum, but for the sake of doing some evaluation, I want to take it there.
Sure.
As we sit here today, 6 days before the draft, free agents having been signed, those that are still out there on the market, the pickings are slim. But as we sit here today, when you look at the Eagles roster, put them in an order for me, positionally, the Eagles' biggest needs. And they will try and continue to upgrade, first with the draft, then what's left over in free agency. Sometimes you get lucky right before the season starts, somebody gets cut. No, all those things are possibilities, but they're down the road. As we sit here today, positionally rank the Eagles' biggest needs in your estimation.
They have a few for sure. I think probably, I mean, it depends what you're going to do with Hassan Reddick. If he's going to play mostly linebacker, I still think you have a big need at the edge on a defensive end. I think even with Reddick, you still need another guy who can get to the quarterback. So whether that's in the middle at defensive tackle or whether that's on the end, this team was horrific at getting to the quarterback last year from their front four. And I think that's the area of this team that they need the most help. I think cornerback, Darius Slay is still very good, but he's not going to be good forever. He's 31, so he's aging. And so if you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line, you need another cornerback. You need a number 2 cornerback for this year's team. And so that's a big need. And I think you need a number 2 wide receiver on this team. That would be my number 3, because you just don't have enough talent there. Like you guys were saying before I came on, they are talking up Quez Watkins. They love him. And I think there were a number of plays on the field last year that Jalen Hurts missed with Quez Watkins. He probably could have had better numbers. Same with Devontae Smith. Maybe those guys will do better here in with another year in the system, but I still think they are woefully lacking in terms of talent at the wide receiver position. And then, I think it's safety. They have some long-term issues at safety. I think they could use a guy for this year and for the long term as well. Those would probably be the way I would rank the top 4 or 5 areas of need with this team right now. They're mostly on the defensive side of the ball.
So if we took a snapshot right now, John, if you go back to the end of the regular season, the disappointment, the loss in Tampa Bay in the playoffs, and you move forward after Howie Roseman will tell you, and he's right, talent gathering season, as he likes to call it, can go into August. And we've seen that in the past with guys like Ronald Darby, most notably the trade in the Super Bowl season. So he is right, but we can only talk about where we are, and you generally want to set yourself up for the draft. Do you think the Eagles have gotten better or worse or stagnant in sort of a stasis where they are after the first few waves of free agency?
I think if you liked the 2021 Eagles, you're going to love the 2022 Eagles. There's not a whole lot of difference. I think they may have gotten marginally better. That being said, it's not much. I think the Reddick signing was a big signing. I think that was universally praised for good reason. It was a good deal monetarily. He's a good player. I think getting Kazir White at linebacker was a good move. I like that they're investing in the linebacker position here. It's about time. But bringing back Fletcher Cox and bringing back Derek Barnett, and we're bringing back some of the guys from this team who have underperformed the last couple of years, and they just were not able to get that wide receiver that I think really would have helped Jalen Hurts. If he's going to take another step, take that next step. And so I think you're still lacking in skill position players. I don't know what we're going to get on Miles Sanders in the final year of his deal. He's got to stay on the field, and he's struggled to do that. I do think you're going to see this offense do a lot of what they did last year. They're going to run the ball a lot. I don't think you're going to see them throw it a lot, and I still think the defense, I don't know what Jonathan Gannon is planning on doing with his defense. If he has the same scheme as last year where everybody's playing back and you're trying to get pressure with just the front four, I think you're going to see the defense struggle against good quarterbacks and good offenses. So there hasn't been much of a move forward. It's been mostly static. And I think maybe there's been a slight move forward, but it hasn't been very much.
All right, John, I'm going to put on my eagle-colored glasses for a second here, okay?
Yeah.
Knowing full well that this is probably not going to happen, but at least 2 quarterbacks are taken in the first 14 picks. which there might be none taken.
Hmm.
Maybe even 3 quarterbacks are taken. All right, I'm probably pushing it a little bit too far. But Drake London is taken higher. I'm not as big a Drake London fan as others. So wide receivers, both Wilson and Williams are available at the Eagles pick at number 15. Jordan Davis falls down and is available. The massive defensive tackle is there. And we'll put our buddy Kyle Hamilton in the mix at number 15 as well. And the Eagles have a needed safety. Both John and I are big Kyle Hamilton fans. Let's say all those players are available. Who are the Eagles going to take with that 15th pick?
It's a great, and that's one of the nice things about where they're picking. They probably have 6 or 7 guys at 4 or 5 different positions that will be available to them at number 15. And I think they're going to move up. I think they're going to package that extra 3rd rounder they got from New Orleans and move up and grab maybe one of the guys you're talking about. For me, man, I don't normally like the idea of drafting a run-stopping defensive tackle in the 1st round, but Jordan Davis is something unique. I think he would probably be, if they stay at 15, I think he would probably be my selection there, simply because in Jonathan Gannon's defense, he would enable Gannon to do a little bit more of what he wants to do by having a guy who on 1st and 2nd down will be a wrecker in the middle of the defensive line. And, you know, we've seen players like that on championship teams have a huge impact. And I think there's still, because of his physical profile, because he is so athletic, because he's such a ridiculous beast, athletically speaking, I think there's room for him to grow as a pass rusher. I think he can be a guy who can get to the quarterback on a maybe not a double-digit sack guy, but get you 6 or 7 sacks a season. So I think that would be a real. I like the idea of going up and grabbing that safety, because the Eagles have never drafted a safety in the 1st round ever in their franchise history. So I don't see that happening. And I know they love the trenches. So I think Jordan Davis, if he's still there at like 13 or 14, they might even move up to get him. And I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. That's the guy I've kind of put my highlighter on, Jordan Davis, for all the reasons you talked about, especially Jonathan Gannon is specifically looking for that 0-1 technique because Javon Hargrave was really, really bad. I think people don't realize how bad he was against the run. He was a great pass rusher, but he was really poor against the run. That he used an extra safety at time. That's why he used so many 5-man fronts for run fits and all that kind of stuff. And Jordan Davis would stop all that and enable him to do some different things. I do hear the criticism about him being a rotational player, but all defensive linemen are rotational players now. Right. So I don't necessarily buy that. You saw B2B in Tampa, and I'll take that guy if we're going to get similar something of that. Now, Jody brings up Kyle Hamilton, though. That is my number 1 player in this draft. I think he is the best player in this draft, the best football player. Now, I know he's not going number 1.
Right.
I find it hard to believe the Eagles. I find it hard to believe he would fall to the Eagles at 15. Right. We had a conference call with Daniel Jeremiah yesterday. He said if Hamilton falls, the Eagles have to take him. He'd be a home run pick. If for some reason he does fall, do you think Howie Roseman would change all that history? And he's not a part of it. He's only part of it since basically 2010. And some seasons he wasn't even a part of that. But do you think he would pass on Kyle Hamilton if he had the opportunity?
It's a great question. I think if he's there at 15, like if he drops all the way to 15, I don't see how he could pass on him. I think it's a matter of how far would Howie be willing to trade up to go get him if he slips and if he falls. How much leverage can you get out of that extra 3rd round pick? If you deal 15 and the first 3rd rounder that you have, can you get up inside? Can you get to 10? Can you get to 11? I think you might be able to get up that high. We saw last year the Eagles moved from 12 to 10 doing that. So 15 to 10 might be a little bit much to ask for. If he falls into that 12 range, 11, 12, 13 range, I think the Eagles definitely start to make some phone calls. And my guess is that Jordan Davis is a little higher on their list simply because of the position that he plays. But I think they would be silly not to pursue Hamilton if he falls into that range for sure. He's a great player. He would also be a solution at the safety position for 5 to 10 years with this franchise. And we know from Brian Dawkins, we know from past history how important having a good safety is in the backfield.
I want to follow up on something you said earlier, John, because you and I agree the Hassan Reddick signing was a good one. Shoot, I lobbied like hell last year for the Eagles to sign Hassan Reddick when he signed his one-year deal to go back and play for his college coach in Carolina. So I'm glad they got it done this offseason. But there is a question with him, as you pointed out. Is he a linebacker or is he a defensive end? He's kind of a hybrid, and he plays a little of both, and it all comes down to how you use him, how you get him in position to make plays. Do you have faith that Jonathan Gannon is that guy, that he will fit what Gannon wants to do, or Gannon will fit what he wants to do to get the most out of Hassan Reddick? Based
on what we saw last year, I don't have a lot of faith in Jonathan Gannon. I couldn't understand why he was getting so many head coaching interviews this offseason, as I think most Eagles fans were kind of, perplexed by that. So I don't know. He hasn't had a player like Hassan Reddick last year with the Eagles. So I don't want to say he can't. My confidence level in him being able to do that is not high. It's difficult to figure out a way to work a player into a rotation like that, where he's playing linebacker, playing edge, and you're trying to maintain a defensive front rotation that makes sense in addition to working a linebacker rotation in there. There's a lot of moving pieces there, and I'm not sure. I'm not confident, that Jonathan Gannon can pull it off.
If you're in a room with Jonathan Gannon, you'd understand why he gets interviews. I will say this. I'm surprised he didn't get the job. That's how, if you talk to the guy, he's pretty convincing. Now, a lot of the reasons people get head coaching jobs, Nick Sirianni's the same way. I mean, he's got that effusive personality. He went into Jeffrey's Palm Beach mansion. He won him over. And basically they were looking for somebody they felt a little more comfortable with than Josh McDaniels, who, and by the way, I think Jeffrey was right. I think ultimately Josh McDaniels and Howie Roseman would have butted heads. So it's kind of waiting and finally found the guy. Jonathan has some of those same qualities as far as winning people over. But as you said, John, and that doesn't have anything to do with defensive football. It is going to be interesting, though, because if you look at his history in Indianapolis and even going back to Minnesota, we start talking about linebackers. They had Darius Leonard in Indianapolis. They had Eric Kendricks in Minnesota, Anthony Barr before all the injuries when he was a really good player. Here in Philadelphia, they haven't taken a linebacker for 44 years. Jerry Robinson is sitting out there in Southern California getting ready to pop the bubbly again. Or is he? Is there a potential? I joke with Jody, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 44 times. I'm sitting here thinking they might take a linebacker because Jonathan Gannon values linebackers more than the defensive coordinators that have been here recently. And it's a need still. And there's two good players. Is it all coming together, John Stolnis?
It could be, especially if some of the other targets at positions they traditionally like more are off the board, and they don't see a whole lot of value in taking an edge rusher or a defensive tackle at 15 if the board doesn't fall the way they want, or if one of the wide receivers that they may have their eye on, if Chris Olave is off the board. I could see them going linebacker. I don't think it's the likely scenario, but I do think it's possible because, it is a need on this team. And we know, Jim Schwartz didn't care about linebackers, one iota. So there was never a possibility that was going to happen. I don't think Jonathan Gannon has the same cachet with Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman that Jim Schwartz did because of Schwartz's history as a defensive coordinator. But I don't see it. I don't see them getting a linebacker here unless one of the top guys, again, falls for some reason, the way the board shakes out. And then maybe you just say, okay, this guy's too good a player not to take advantage of. I'll say this. The Eagles have a lot of needs at a lot of different positions. they can't afford to be thinking about zeroing in on a certain position. They have got to take the best available player at any one of a number of 4 or 5 positions, like we've outlined: cornerback, safety, linebacker, edge rusher, wide receiver. Really, whoever is tops on their board when it comes to 15, or if there's a trade up window of 11 to 12 where Howie Roseman knows he can move up and the guy that they really like is available, I think they'll go get him. I don't think they're going to rule out any position, including linebacker.
How about quarterback?
I don't think there's anybody in the first round they like in order to spend a first round pick. I mean, Willis is really the only kid that I would say is worth taking a shot on. But I think, next year is going to be a better quarterback class. You've got tons of needs on the defensive side of the ball and at wide receiver. I say, you've given yourself an extra first rounder next year to see what you can do with quarterbacks. This year, there's just nobody good enough to take that high. And I would stick with Jalen Hurts for this year and use those picks to, fill out your defense or maybe get a wideout.
Now, I'll give you another reason why I don't think the linebacker position has a chance of being selected in the first round. If we're tying it to, the new defensive coordinator has a higher evaluation of how important linebackers are. Well, you're taking a kid in the first round, you're banking on him for at least 5 years, if not longer, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan Gannon, he's not going to be here. The Eagles are only renting Jonathan Gannon. Mm-hmm. This is a stopover for him before he gets his head coaching position. I didn't say that. Howie Roseman said that.
Yeah.
So if he's stating that and believes that, why would you take a linebacker if for 40 years you didn't believe in linebackers? You're going to take him for 1 year with a guy who's going to go ahead and leave you next year anyway? The math doesn't work. That's why they're not taking a linebacker this year.
I think that's fair too. And I think that's also, if you are not going to draft Jordan Davis, that's one of the reasons why. If you feel like Davis specifically fits into what Jonathan Gannon wants to do on defense, but otherwise you may not be interested in taking a run-stopping defensive tackle early in the first round, that's a reason to look past him. I still think he's a good enough player and has a good enough profile to take at number 15. But if there might be some defensive players who you say, this guy would fit in Gannon's scheme more than maybe another scheme, but Gannon might not be here for very long. So I think that's a fair point.
Maybe it's a little bit I'm going to throw another name in the mix because when we talk about ceiling, scouts love to talk about it in this league. Cliche of boom or bust. One guy I think that fits that into that category is Derek Stingley. And I think he could be either one of the top 5 cornerbacks in football or just an absolute Jeffrey Okudah-like disaster at the cornerback position. And that's a little danger. You think Howie Roseman's up for some danger when you talk about those trade-up candidates you've been talking about, John, because I agree with you. I think Jordan Davis is in that mix. I don't know if Kyle would be in that mix because I find it hard to believe teams are going to be that dumb to make them last that long, but you never know. But I think Stingley could be in that list as well. I put Gardner, but I don't think Gardner's going to get anywhere near where you can move up. He's the one guy corner that you might say, all right, we can lock this down. We can get that, as you mentioned, Darius Slay's over 30. He's not going to be Darius Slay forever. You also have a potential cornerback 1 moving forward. You don't have to rely on Zach McPherson as a second-year player. What are your thoughts on Derek Stingley?
There's obviously a lot of risk reward with him. His 2019 season as a freshman, he was maybe the best cornerback in college football. And now the last couple of years as LSU has kind of tapered off and they haven't been in the national championship conversation. He's missed a bunch of games. There's some questions obviously about his makeup, his desire to play. I think if you're trading up, I would have reservations about trading up to 10 to get Derek Stingley. Talent-wise, I think, you pair him with Darius Slay, you could have a dynamic cornerback duo back there. And then with Avonte Maddox in the slot, that could be a real strength next year. But it's just a matter of which Stingley are you going to get. And I would imagine that the Eagles have had conversations with him, have had conversations with his coaches. And I think if they feel good about where he is mentally and they feel good about his health, makes a lot of sense. Makes all the sense in the world to move up to 10 or 11 if Stingley is still there to go get him, because they do need another cornerback. And would not be at all surprised if they don't get Stingley, that they, get like a Trent McDuffie or something like that at 15. But and that might be the calculation too, is how do they evaluate Trent McDuffie compared to Derek Stingley? Is there enough red flags about Stingley? And do you like McDuffie enough that if they're really close, then maybe you just stay where you are at 15 and take McDuffie, or maybe McDuffie falls to 18, you grab your cornerback there and you take a wide out at 15, or you move up to get Davis or whatever. It's going to really, I think, depend on what they also feel like they might be able to get at 18, depending on what they move up to go get from 15.
All right, I'm going to ask you to evaluate the general manager of the Eagles, because my partner, John McMullen, likes to use this phrase, and it's very much on point. Howie Roseman likes to win the trade. When the Eagles make deals, you look at it ahead of time, you go, wow, value for value, the Eagles did well. We certainly believe that's the case with the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Howie Roseman can win the trade with the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo Samuel is, through mediators, asked for a trade out of San Francisco. We've had two massive wide receiver trades already this year, with Devontae Adams going from Green Bay to Vegas, and Tyreek Hill going from Kansas City down to Miami. So you have those as templates.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get Deebo Samuel for less in exchange for what you have to give up to get him, and comparable amount of salary, by the way, he's younger than either one of those players.
Right.
If that trade is out there, should the Eagles pull the trigger on it?
I would. I think there is certainly some danger to it. It doesn't sound like Samuel wants to be used in the backfield anymore as a wide back. He wants to just be a wideout. So one of the things that made him really special in San Francisco was his ability to run the ball out of the backfield. He scored 21 touchdowns as a runner last year. So if he doesn't want to be used in that way, and now you're just looking at him as a wide receiver, I still think you have a really productive player. But one of the things that has made him so special was his running ability out of the backfield. So you have to kind of know going in, I think you're going to lose that kind of flexibility with him. And so as a pure receiver only, is he worth $30 million a year? What else do you have to do to the salary cap in order to get him in? What other money do you have to kick down the road? How does that limit what you can do at the quarterback position next year? If you want to trade for a veteran who might become available or something like that, or you want to draft a quarterback really high, then that first round pick is going to cost you, even though he's on a rookie deal, if you draft a quarterback high, it's going to cost you a significant amount of cap space. And so there's all those things to consider. That being said, you get a guy like Deebo Samuel on the outside to pair with Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins. I think you dynamically change the offense. I think Nick Sirianni has to throw the ball more. He can't be a run-heavy team if he's got Deebo Samuel on the outside. And then it's just a matter of telling Jalen Hurts, listen, you're going to throw 30 times a game. We've got to use these guys. We've got to get these guys targets. And so I would do it. I would pull the trigger because the chances are better than not. I don't think that Jalen Hurts is the quarterback after this year. And so who knows what you get for 2023 at quarterback. And Deebo Samuel is young. He's going to be around for a long time. So he's likely here for your next franchise quarterback, whoever that might be, if it's not Jalen Hurts. So I would do it. I wouldn't trade both first rounders. I would probably deal one of the first rounders. And then, whatever else needs to be in day 2, or maybe something in a first round pick next year. I don't know what else it would cost, but I don't think I would do more than one first rounder for Deebo Samuel.
Follow him on Twitter at John Stolnis. You can read him at Bleeding Green Nation. If you like the Phillies, you can read him at The Good Bite as well. John, last one from me. Let's follow up on Deebo Samuel, because Jody knows by now that's my favorite player to watch in the entire NFL. Love him. Love him. Electric. I can't bring him in here. I can't bring him in here and hamstring Nick Sirianni as a second-year coach and say, hey, we're getting this great player, Nick, but you can't run jet sweeps. You can't put him in the backfield. That's a non-starter to me. Am I overreacting from that standpoint? Is that just where we are in the sort of era of player empowerment?
I think, he's forcing his way out of San Francisco, essentially. So yes, players have more power now than they ever have to determine where they go and to determine what they're doing on the field. It's a calculation of saying, can I get enough production from him as a pure wide receiver in order to make it work on the roster. Because I don't know that you want to run him as much as San Francisco did, and maybe that if Nick Sirianni says, yeah, I wouldn't plan to run him as much with jet sweeps, and jet sweeps are a little different. I don't think he's saying I don't ever want to run the ball again, but I don't think he wants to line up as a running back. And so I think there are ways to use him creatively that he would be okay with. I don't necessarily think he's saying I don't ever want another rushing attempt again, but it would have to be part of the conversation with him for sure to see what he would be willing to do. And that is just the way of the world now. And if you're going to acquire a player like that, give up the trade capital, give up the money in order to sign him to a long-term deal, you'd have to kind of settle on what his role would be. That's what I was saying. There is a risk there, and it certainly would be there. But I think he would bring you enough as a pure wide receiver in order to justify giving up the draft pick. I don't know if he's good enough as a pure wide receiver to give you to have to give out a $30 million a year contract, and that is the big question to me. It's the money more than it is the draft capital.
All right, John, last one from me, and I'm going to ask you to look into your pigskin crystal ball.
Yeah.
The NFL announced yesterday that I think I wrote it down here, like May 27th. May 12th is the announcement of the schedule. Yeah. So we know who the Eagles are going to play, where they're going to play. We just don't know when they're going to play. We'll find out on May 12th, and they'll make a whole day thing out of it on the NFL Network. God bless them. Get a whole day of programming out of a piece of paper.
About
summer content, man. Yeah. Summer content.
About dates and logistics. I love that people get so excited about dates.
As a beat guy, it actually helps someone.
John,
there's his schedule for the next 6 months, so he can actually start putting things together. But the importance of when you play the team, where you play the team, like I'm jettisoning all the way to the end. Week 18, because we're now playing 17 games. Mm-hmm. Eagles will be playing who, where, and will they be playing the JV again this year since they're already going to be in a playoff position and not have to worry about the outcome of that Week 18 game?
The NFL is obsessed with having the Eagles play the Cowboys in the final week of the season. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm so tired of this really important rivalry half of the time being relegated to a game that means nothing. I know they want to think like, well, these two teams may be battling it out for the division title week 18. What drama? It rarely works that way. And so I want to see Dallas opening week. I want to see week 1 against Dallas. And then I want to see like a midseason game against Dallas. I want to see week 9, week 10, where, both teams are really just, you would hope, hitting the ground running. I think the NFL is going to schedule an Eagles-Dallas game in Dallas in week 18.
All right, I'll give you mine. The return of Carson.
Oh, that would be.
Commanders have to come to Lincoln Financial Field week 18. And then we have to hope the same thing. It's not the JV going out there. That the Eagles actually need the game to take on Carson Wentz. That could be
Carson's got to get through 18 weeks from an injury standpoint and a production standpoint. There's not a good chance you're going to see Carson in week 18.
That's true, too. Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers. That's what they get. John, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. Thanks for getting up early with us. We will certainly be touching base again down the road.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks.
Thanks.